academics, invited guests, students. I have been introduced since yesterday. We are here to launch one of the biggest projects of the project, which is Norway 2, a project that supports education in higher learning institutions as well as research. So under that project, Norway 2, it has several partners, and 3 partners are from the Global South. The countries involved include Uganda Christian University, University of Rwanda, University of KwaZulu-Natal, and our overall coordinating institution is NLA University College in Norway. Professor Terje is here. Probably he can stand up just for recognition. He's the coordinator of the overall project. Other coordinators, Sarah Gibson from University of KwaZulu-Natal. Would you like to stand up, please? And then Monica Chibita, that you all know. She's the coordinator of the Uganda Christian University. So the book emerged from 4 thematic areas, but this one, which is on representation, social justice, is where we, edited this book. I will later, at a later time, I will introduce my colleagues, but it doesn't matter if I mention the names. Associate Professor Solveig Omland was my co-editor, and then Professor Carol Azungi Dralega was another co-editor. I will briefly speak about them later, but I want first of all to start with what the book is about, why the focus on elements of gender and media and representation. Gender and media representation perspectives from sub-Saharan Africa is grounded in the thesis that how media talks about its practice and how they act about issues that are related to media needs scrutiny. So we wanted, and indeed there has been research on gender from various contexts. But we also found that these issues have not been approached from the Global South context. Some of the research which exists does not take all these components together. Sometimes it's gender and media, sometimes it's gender representation, in a wider scale, like in politics and all that. But we wanted to centralize the media because of its role in, not only serving the public's interest, but in advocating for social justice. So we located media in that context, and then we brought the notion of representation as key on the agenda of the media. So the book, therefore, offers critical contributions to the study of media, gender, equality, and equity, and social justice as well, but from the perspectives of sub-Saharan Africa. It conceptualizes issues of gender representation and participation within the framework of gender mainstreaming, which has been defined by Goal 8 of the UN SDGs and other UN frameworks that advocate for the inclusion of all the marginalized groups not necessarily gender, because as you know, gender is not only about women, but it involves all our actions that are related to our relationships in society, and it includes, in this case, other vulnerable groups. So the various chapters problematizes current gender imbalances, particularly in media and communication institutions, and the media's role in representing these issues through national and regional ontologies and epistemologies. It also engages the functions and the challenges of media and communication in the promotion of equal representation of women and to some extent minority groups in sub-Saharan Africa, including men. Given the vital role of media in society, these issues raise concerns to gender equality and equity, and particularly about how media discourses represent and construct them. The book does not only look at the issues that are included, but it also looks at the issues that are excluded, why, and what other alternatives can be taken to include those issues that seem to be omitted, which relate to gender. And of course, how these issues are constructed in media discourses. But why sub-Saharan Africa? Sub-Saharan Africa, we chose to concentrate on sub-Saharan Africa, and indeed we came far, because first of all we had looked at only East Africa. As you know, 𝐒𝐿CA started in East Africa, and the project, the Norway project, also operates in East Africa, and the name is what's the name again of our project? Capacity building for media resilience in sub-Saharan Africa. No, in Eastern Africa, for resilience, for a resilience media in Eastern Africa. So we worked with that first, but then later we thought about broadening the scope to include chapters from sub-Saharan Africa. And I will speak about the countries that have contributed. The second reason, of course, from the first reason is that the book addresses issues that are contextualized within African perspective, not necessarily sub-Saharan Africa. Despite, and this is the second point, despite the increase in visibility, because once we started training our students on gender issues, from my university, we never had this course, and I think one of the institutions that helped us to start training gender was FOIL Media Institute, which was working with Linnaeus University in Sweden. So they introduced the gender course, but it was we started working on the curriculum in 2015, and then we launched the programs on gender course in 2017. While other countries, maybe they started earlier. So that one, from the Rwandan perspective, increased the voices of gender, of women in news media discourses. But the problem is that even though there is that visibility and the voices, women particularly are still underrepresented in media institutions. And when they are included, then maybe they are portrayed in negative ways. And I think very many discussions have been on that. So we tried to address some of those issues and many others by working on this book. So in the end, it's a vital resource for educators, scholars, academics, but more importantly, students. that research into these issues. So it offers a comprehensive analysis of the common reference points for achieving gender inclusion in sub-Saharan Africa. Its approach aligns with the work of scholars, Gazepo, for example, myself and a colleague, Njuguna, Carol Azungi, there's a colleague also here from Ghana, Tete, Ajin, Theodora, are you here? Yes. So she has also researched on these issues. But we wanted work which is together, so that if a student wants to read about gender issues that are related to, politics, representation, economic issues, development issues, it's in one package. So that resource is there, and we urge you to recommend it to your students. The authors from 8 countries, and these countries include sub-Saharan African countries of Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, Ghana, Nigeria, and South Africa. And the 8th country is from Norway. As you can see, the 2 editors are from Norway, but also we received some chapters from Norway focusing on sub-Saharan Africa. May I ask the contributors of this book who are here to stand up for recognition? Thank you very much. Other contributors included most members from East Africa who reviewed. Peer review, finding peer reviews lately when we are so busy. I think the demands of our institutions is so high that we rarely find time to do work on the side which is not related to our day jobs. So we recognize the contribution of the various peer reviewers. Another significant contributor was Professor Juliet Macharia. Would you like to stand up if you are here? Yeah, she wrote the preface. So the 15 chapters showcase the wide range of consideration for media practitioners while researching or reporting on issues around gender in development democracies, contributing to our understanding of current trends and shifts in media representations. I also need to talk very briefly about the fact that this resource is open access. All you need is to search for it and, download it. I don't know if you're allowed to download it. Yes, you can download it and then have it as your research. And, you first, of course, consider if it is relevant. But I can assure you it's very relevant in the area of media, gender, and representation. So it is a publication by Emirates Publishing Company, and as I said, it's open access. How did we get to that open access? We're invited to enter into a book proposal, our book proposal into Knowledge Unlatched competition under the series of diverse perspectives on creating a fairer society. And we emerged among the very few winners, and that's how we got this opportunity. As you know, open access enables a wider audience accessibility as well as readership. And when we publish, we want also to increase the impact and also to be read, because that's the essence of a publication. You don't want to publish and your work ends up on the shelves. You want to be read and you want to be cited. So that was the opportunity, and it's online now. Let me briefly speak about these two wonderful ladies. These are my co-editors. We had a very healthy working relationship. Solveig and I did not have any experience, significant experience, that goes beyond maybe project reports. We didn't have that. We did also have significant, which goes beyond supervision of our PhD students, because when you supervise, sometimes you edit students' work. You point them to the right direction of writing. So we didn't have that. But we received very, very good coaching and mentorship from Professor Carol Azungi, who has several books on her record. I think she has five edited volumes, and also I think she has one that she has authored. So I want to thank them in front of you, because really, these guys, they are the best I could have had as a working team. We are now also dreaming about editing more books, and we will, because it was a very healthy relationship. Thank you very much. We thank NORAD. Anyway, I also need to mention that mentorship did not come only for them. All of us received mentorship from the 4 coordinating institutions, our colleagues, because when we proposed when we presented the proposal, the colleagues had to give us input on how to improve it, and even through consulting. This is when we came to agree that we really need insights from Sub-Saharan Africa. So we thank you all, but last but not least, we thank NORAD for both financial and advisory support. So we thank you very much, Professor Terje, and by extension the overall NORAD project. I also need maybe to signpost that 4 other books contributions are coming from this project. We are some of the projects are in advanced stage, others are still inviting chapters contributions. So, but they are on different topics. So, watch this space, and then maybe you can contribute. The book is structured in 2 major sections, and I will now invite my colleague, Associate Professor Solveig Omland, to take us through the first section. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Margaret. She mentioned that you should go out and search for the book. I can do it very easy for you. Pick up one of these bookmarks that Carol has made, and there's a QR code there, so you can easily access it. We'll make those available on the way out. I just want to present the first section, looking, as you see, on gender representation, construction, and portrayal. And several authors have contributed in this section, and my colleague, Professor Emily Moracho, and we have attempted to help mainly maybe ourselves, but the readers, to understand what are we talking about when we talk about media and gender, and specifically women and media. So I'll just give you some few highlights from our chapter to inform you of what we've been working on. So we try to distinguish between 2 categories when we talk about it: women in media and women on media. So the reason why we do that is to become aware. When we talk about women in media, who are we talking about? When we're talking about the women in media, we're talking about many of you, journalists and presenters, editors and managers, and media owners. On the other hand, if we're talking on what we call women on media, we're talking about experts, analysts, subject eyewitnesses, or subjects for media stories. Just to make that distinction, to help us when we work and do research, what are we talking about when we talk about women? And we also, in our chapter, we talk quite a bit about media and women and public life connection is kind of the overarching theme. And there we also talk quite a bit about media, how it mirrors the society, and also, of course, how women are viewed and the societal attitudes towards gender roles. But we also talk about media as a platform for women to make change and so on. So with that short introduction and highlights from that chapter, please access and read and learn more. I want to mention 3 other of the chapters in this section, and we're very delighted that a lot are contributing with new findings and new empirical work to help us get more knowledge in the field that the book is about. And I want to just briefly talk about 2 chapters, and then I'll give you, Terje, the opportunity to talk about the chapter you and Theodora contributed with. One of the chapters with Dennis Ikachoy and Joseph Nkuno, they talk about how the Kenyan media represents female political candidates in the 2022 elections. And it's interesting that the findings, very briefly, and again, encouraging you to look into the chapter and read it, the finding shows that women are represented in somewhat stereotypical ways, often with gender biases and so on. But they also see that there is a positive shift in how women are framed, and they see that there are narratives celebrating the female candidates as history makers and agents of change, and and highlighting their achievements and leadership potential. So those are some of the few findings from that contribution and chapter. I also want to mention the chapter written by 2 people here in the audience, Jeanne d'Arc and Professor Sarah Gibson. They co-wrote with their colleague, Anna Durden. They studied how mass media shapes the perception and discussions about abortion. What they did was a literature review, and there are many findings also from their research, and they call it it's double-edged, their findings. It's both the media fosters informed public debate, and it also reinforces stigma. So they see in their research that some of the stories, some of the discourses on abortion are negatively framed, often maybe even presenting it as a criminal act and associating it with health risks and so on. But you also see that there are some positive advocacy potential, that the media also is an agenda for progressive change on how abortion is viewed, for example, as a human right. I'd also like to introduce my dear colleague Terje, Professor Terje, who will talk a little bit about the final chapter of this section.
I have co-written one of the chapters in this book, and I just very briefly presented. I'm told by the conference convener that we should keep the session here relatively short, because the tea is now waiting for us soon. So the chapter that we have written, the co-writer is Theodora Mnisi from the University of Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, is about the coverage in 2 newspapers in Tanzania of President Samia in her first year of the presidency in 2021 and 2022. As far as I'm concerned, she is now the only female leader in an African country. So we studied some 400 plus articles from these 2 newspapers. Abarileo, that's the state-owned one, and then we have Mwananchi, which is the private one. And we have lots of documentation from other studies that female political leaders often tend to be stereotyped in their presentation, in the media. The perhaps somewhat surprising finding that we got is that in these 2 newspapers, the president, Samia, is not presented in a typical, in a stereotypical way. In 96 to 98% of the articles, no label whatsoever is attached to gender. It's about her as a politician, as a state leader, and all of that. And in the cases where she is actually labeled as a woman, as a mother and so forth, caretaker, it's mostly herself, referring to herself as a grandmother and so forth. So that was sort of a perhaps surprising finding from that study. And you can read more about it in the book. It is a very, very good book, and this is what it looks like. You haven't showed it. This is what it looks like. Yes.
So much, Margaret, Solveig, and Terje. As you can see, we have interesting findings, surprising findings, and I have to mention that Solveig is very modest on her chapter, and I feel that it's an outstanding African contribution because they come up with a new model, a new conceptual model for analyzing and understanding gender issues in African contexts. So yeah, check it out. So from section 1 on portrayal, we move to section 2, which is really about how digital media and communication is and can be used to empower or impede gender issues. So here we have 7 chapters, and it covers anything from YouTube usage, radio, community media. We have AI and so much on digital media and communication. But the section really highlights emerging issues, both in new media that has been developed into technological channels, and also the new media. So I can talk about a few chapters, which really all of the chapters stand out, but these were particularly of interest. There is a chapter on digital storytelling as activism, you know, and we have the author here, who is Eva, who highlights how as digital storytelling as a media style and activism tool goes beyond just raising awareness. It warns people, it condemns bad acts, and it also amplifies people's voices. But also, it uses digital storytelling as a methodology through which survivors and netizens, you know, come together in these digital spaces to comfort each other, to share experiences in solidarity. So I think it's really interesting. But one other thing that the chapter does is bring up it links oral media, which is oral traditional storytelling, to social media, which is something deeply African, as we remember. So I think those were quite interesting findings. We have a chapter on gender mainstreaming in AI-enhanced newsroom practice, education, and research. And I think this particular chapter is really good because it warns the risks that we have talked about, especially from yesterday's keynotes and today, about the risks of reproducing historical exclusion, especially when you talk about gender. So in addition to that, the chapter provides toolkits. I think this is really innovative. Toolkits on how journalism practice, journalism research, and journalism education can incorporate gender issues in a more robust way. So it also urges a decolonized and locally grounded approach to AI. So we have a chapter on digital safety, which is also very important. It talks about the paradox of how digital technologies and media heighten visibility and reach, but at the same time they expose, you know, especially female journalists to cyber-stalking, harassment, and all the negative things that can happen. But the other challenge is that this harassment does not only stop online, it trickles down to the real life, which is very, very detrimental and has many consequences. What also is alarming is that it does not people do not only attack the journalism, they attack the identity, the people, the personal identities of the female journalists. But yeah. But anyway, the takeaway here is that empowerment is present, but it's very fragile. And unless we have structural protections in the newsroom, like developing newsroom guidelines and national policies, I think the problem will continue. So finally, a very, very interesting chapter handles YouTube videos as therapy and inclusion. Who would have thought? So, so here we see in YouTube, not just as informational and entertainment channel, it's therapeutic. It's a space where survivors and others come together, you know, to comfort each other, to share coping strategies, to rebuild identities and so on. But we also see now media being reframed as a social service that promotes justice, recovery, and yeah, even economic empowerment. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Carol. That's about the book. But very, very quickly, in the interest of time, we want to don't. Oh, we. Okay. We had someone to review the book, and she's not here, but she sent a 10-minute video, you know, talking about the book, but I understand we are running out of time. I don't know if we'll get another chance to do this, but we'll talk to the convener, yeah, to do this. It's unfortunate that we don't have time to do that. Quickly, I want to present these books as a donation, but I would also want to invite 𝐴𝐷𝐞𝐃 to present copies, 3 copies of the book on communication and social change in Southern Africa, selected case studies, and she co-published it with colleagues